we're updating the Delaware County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it's part of a pilot project that we're going to talk a little bit about today and introduce some of the folks that are taking part in it. We have, so the program that we are working with the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, otherwise known as DISHES, and we're working through a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. And again, we're at the University of Albany. We're at the Albany Visualization and Informatics Lab, and we're in the Geography and Planning Department. And we also are working with a consultant, Behan Planning and Design. And then as part of this larger pilot project, we're working with the counties of Delaware, Sullivan, Hamilton, and Fulton. So there's a number of counties that we're working with to update their hazard mitigation plans. I want to take 1 second to just note that if I'm not sure how this is appearing on your screen, but there at the top of your screen, you can shrink the size of all of the thumbnails by grabbing the here, I'll actually see if I can show you, because it won't work on my computer. You can shrink the size of that and increase the size of my screen if you're having any trouble seeing it. So just a note on that. So your planning team, there's a number of us that are working together on this project from various levels of government, as I just said. At Delaware County, we have Shelley Johnson Bennett and Kristen Schneider. Would you be able to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Shelley Johnson Bennett. I'm the Director of Planning and Watershed Affairs. The Planning Department is sort of the lead role in maintaining and ensuring the hazard mitigation plan gets updated. But we do that in partnership with our other core group partners in the county. Steve Hood at Emergency Services plays a key role in the mitigation plan. We work closely with Soil and Water, DPW, the Sheriff's Office. We bring in economic development, and we sort of just lead the charge, bringing in the experts of the technical pieces where they need it and plug them in and keep things on track. So that's sort of a very broad overview of our role in this process.
Great, thank you. And then we have Avail. So I'll introduce you to a couple of folks here at Avail. Dr. Catherine T. Lawson is our director. I don't know if you want to say anything, Dr. Lawson. Okay. And I'm Eric Kranz, as I said, and I'm going to be working directly with the towns of Harpersfield, Courtright, Stamford, both Town and Village, Walton, Town and Village, and Hobart, as well as the county level. So I'll be a liaison here at the lab for those folks. So you've probably heard me calling, leaving messages on your answering machine, or you've gotten emails from me already. And we have Erica Corsi, who's on the line.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Erica Corsi. I am a project manager at the Avail Lab. I will be a liaison for the Town and Village of Deposit, Town and Village of Hancock, the Town of Middletown, Town of Roxbury, the Village of Fleshmans, and the Village of Margaretville. So please reach out to me if you have any direct questions or concerns regarding the project.
Great. And Adam Toby is unable to make it today. He is also a liaison for a number of towns and communities. You've probably heard his voice on your voicemail, or have received some direct communications from him already. And then Sabrina Jeffcoat.
Greetings, my name is Sabrina Jeffcoat, and I just want to first off say that I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the hazard mitigation update process. So I'll be liaison for the towns of Andes, Bovina, Davenport, Masonville, Sydney, and the Village of Sydney. And so if you have any questions or need any help during this time, feel free to reach out to me as much as as much as necessary. Thanks.
Great. So that's the Avail team. And then over to Behan Planning and Design, Michael Allen.
I'll make sure to unmute myself this time. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Allen. I'm with Behan Planning and Design. We're a land use planning firm located up in Saratoga Springs, New York. And we're going to be handling or facilitating most of the in-person and virtual jurisdictional meetings, which Eric is going to tell you about shortly.
Thank you, Michael. And over to dishes. Karina Cavallo and Shannon Clark.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I will introduce myself a little bit more later, but I wanted to say, yeah, Karina Cavallo and with hazard mitigation at Dishes, but I also have on the line a couple other staff members. That's Beth O'Reilly and Kevin Clapp. These are planning managers in our state offices. And then Shannon.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Shannon Clark. I'm a hazard mitigation planning manager at Dishes, and I work very closely with Karina and with Avail, and we'll be very involved all along the way. So feel free to, consider us part of your planning team, and to direct any questions or concerns to us also. But a lot of our work will be behind the scenes with Avail, and we'll see you in these convenings.
Great, and the special guest today from FEMA, Paul Houle, who has been guiding this process.
Good morning, people. I'm not that special, but happy to be on the call. And Dishes in Delaware County are participating in this pilot, so thank you for doing that. I would just say I'm not sure if I'll speak later, but I had two thoughts as this meeting approached. One is a pilot, so in addition to preparing your plan, if you have suggestions on how the process can be improved, this pilot process can be improved, I'm sure that Eric at Avail would love to hear those, as would Karina. And as you go through the process here, and this would apply to anybody preparing a plan, plus what we're trying to accomplish is that you gather enough information so after considering it, you can make a smart choices on where you want to lower risk and how you want to go about doing that. You're going to be asked to contribute information because it needs to go into the plan, but I would say as you're contributing information, remember the real reason for collecting the information is so that you can understand it and consider it. So don't skip over that part. That's the thinking part that goes into planning, and it's the most important part. And with that, Eric, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So, and actually we'll turn it over to Karina. Karina, would you talk a little bit more in the same line as Paul was just talking about the importance of hazard mitigation planning?
I will, yes. So just a quick introduction, by way of introduction. So we work for the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. And within there, there's the, we provide a lot of services statewide in emergency management, as well as other kind of security and safety and recovery. And I work specifically in recovery. And in the recovery section of Dishes, we administer several of FEMA's disaster grants. That includes public assistance, which is repairing infrastructure, public infrastructure, and reimbursing for some response activities actually that are directly related to a declared event. Some of you may be going through some of this process right now with COVID, as this is a declared event and we are reimbursing for certain services and materials. We also have individual assistance, which isn't approved often, but when it is, it provides assistance to homeowners and individuals. And then today, what we're here to talk about and where I work is in hazard mitigation. And hazard mitigation, I hope you're all aware what we're here to do, and that is the effort to reduce risk long-term to particularly natural disasters. As we all know, the frequency and severity of extreme weather events is increasing, sometimes, at great lengths annually. And it's now kind of more critical than ever that we take steps to protect our communities and our people within them and our infrastructure and our natural environment. And both the federal government and the state government have really recognized how important it is to invest dollars in communities prior to events happening, so that we're not just continuing to respond over and over and rebuild, particularly rebuilding in the same ways that we did before. And there are actually several funding opportunities aside from the federal dollars, which we can talk about at another time, but there are also state funding opportunities. The governor announced the Environmental Bond Act this year, which will provide a significant amount of funding for environmental restoration and investing in local infrastructure, and FEMA's programs, of course. And there are a lot of dollars associated with FEMA's resilience programs. And the funding is critical, of course, but it doesn't mean a whole lot if we don't know where to spend it, and if we can't effectively and efficiently apply for it. And that's where this process is particularly important. That's where, you know, we can really set the stage now. So now is your opportunity to evaluate your risks and to look at your built environment and your community services and assets and your public infrastructure, and most importantly, the people who live here, and what's at risk, and what's at risk now versus what's going to be at risk in the future. How are your communities set up to manage that risk, and what can you do about it? What steps can you take to educate those in your community? What can you do within your existing budgets and your existing planning mechanisms to incorporate components of risk reduction and smart development in the future? And how can you protect not just the people that live here, and or not just the assets that have the monetary value, you know, and but also the built environment and the natural environment around you. And obviously there are some really valuable natural assets in the county that are important to lots of individuals. And so that's why we're all here, right? Is to really identify those risks and move forward into action development. And that's why we've piloted this program with the University at Albany, is because these hazard mitigation plans, they need to set the stage for the action development. And we recognize that historically these plans have been burdensome and time consuming and require a lot of resources to merely meet FEMA's requirements. So for eligibility for FEMA's, for FEMA's programs, you need to meet the basic requirements. And very often that is, that's all there's time for. And in 2019, we piloted our program, our state hazard mitigation plan as the first web-based hazard mitigation plan. And now your county multi-jurisdictional plan will be one of the first web-based county plans. And Eric is going to introduce you to some of those features, I believe, and some of the kind of exciting components of that planning process. But ultimately, we really hope that this is going to provide exponential value to your communities, and that it'll be easier and cheaper and less burdensome and less boring and redundant, and really more useful. And you are also so fortunate to have such a great team with Shelley and Kristen at the county, which was another really strong advantage of piloting this project in Delaware County, is the kind of excellent planning that is already happening in the county. We want to see that leveraged. We want to see all of the work that's being done pulled into different mechanisms to ensure that this planning process is truly a living plan, and that you can integrate it into your daily operations. And so we're here really to support you at the state level. We want to see this effort be successful. We want this to lead to actions. We want the actions to be strong and well developed and competitive for funding. We want you to identify actions that you can achieve and implement without funding, and those that you can guide community members to to take on their own with their own homes and properties. And we do really need you to participate. So thank you so much for being here now. There is going to be information requested of you, and you have several people here on your team who are going to facilitate really good engagement to get the answers to the questions that are going to lead to this kind of most important step of action development. And we'll be providing a lot more information down the line related to funding opportunities that you can seek now and in the future that you should be getting prepared for. I hope to make connections for you with federal funding opportunities as well. And these plans, I think, are going to have a really great value for you, and your communities. But ultimately, they're going to have a lot of value statewide. They're going to kind of change the way that we approach hazard mitigation planning. And so your input, as Paul mentioned, is also very important. And we want to know that your needs are being met and that your unique community, your interests are being reflected in this plan. And the only way that we can ensure that that happens is with your participation. And we hope that you'll take advantage of this and, really do well, and also reach out. We are here to help you at the state. And of course, your county representatives are a liaison for you to reach us if you need to. And yeah, we're really excited about this opportunity. And also, just I should say, in this environment, this kind of COVID virtual working environment for lots of people, but I know many of you are back at work now. I should say, if you have any other questions related to your disaster needs, and particularly in your, and with any of the grants that we administer, feel free to reach out to me, and I can make those connections for you as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karina. And just to add a little bit to what Karina was saying, as your role as a jurisdictional representative in this project is to participate in the interview process, the data collection process. It's also to participate in the strategy development process. You're serving as a representative of your community, and you're essential to drafting and adopting the hazard mitigation plan that, again, makes your community eligible for some funding opportunities through FEMA for mitigation funding. So it's very important that you are available, and we will work with you to find your best availability to go through this process together here. So, and our liaisons at Avail Lab will be coordinating with each and every one of you. And I showed this a few minutes ago while Karina was talking, just to show you where we are in the process. The previous hazard mitigation plan is from 2013. It expired in 2018. And then the 2019 state update to the hazard mitigation plan, that's when we started working with DISHES to modernize the mitigation planning program at New York State and move it towards a web-based integrated platform. And so all the data that we're collecting from this pilot project and all of the future hazard mitigation plans that utilize this new platform will inform the state mitigation plan the next time that needs to be updated. So it's really integrating both the state and local planning processes. So it's exciting to be working on this as part of that sort of future focused type of planning. And then we have the update process is through 2020, which we're in right now, and we want to have a final product by January of 2021. That is the deadline really for being eligible for funding that we've been talking about. If you'd like to access that 2013 hazard mitigation plan, it is on the Delaware County Planning Department website. The link is here in your presentation. You can click on that. Additionally, the New York State 2019 hazard mitigation plan is available via the internet as well, so that you can check that out. It's a totally interactive, visualization heavy document, and it's the first state hazard mitigation plan in the nation to be made fully available via the internet as a web-based plan.
Sorry, Eric, if I may, I don't know if it's possible to copy paste those links into the chat, or at least the top link.
Sure.
Because I think that might be easy for everybody to access.
Great.
You can't actually click on the link on our screen right now, but.
Great. And yeah, so Erica, if you, from my team, if you could put those into the chat, that would be great. So organizing the plan. So we've been pulling together the planning process that we're presenting to you. You should have gotten from me an outreach strategy document. It outlines a lot of, or basically the entire planning process is in there. One thing to note here is that the outreach strategy is defined. It defines 5 different groups, and the core planning group, the steering committee group, the jurisdictional teams, the stakeholders, and the public. Today's call is only made up of the core planning group, the steering committee, and the jurisdictional teams. There will be opportunities for bringing other stakeholders into the mix. We encourage you to share with us anything in the public, as well as if there's anybody you know that you feel like would be a valuable resource in your own community. We want to hear from you about who those people are. And so the core planning group has been meeting bi-weekly over the last couple of months, since like February, and we've been pulling together the strategy. We've been discussing a lot of different things about the plan, about your community, etc. And that core planning group includes Kristen and Shelley from Delaware County, Avail, Dishes, and Behan Planning and Design. We've also met with a steering committee, which is really the local experts and advisors. There's some folks from the jurisdictional representatives team that are a part of the steering committee as well. It's a group of people that are really focused on looking at the county as a whole, and they have a little bit more active ask of them in this process to synthesize a lot of what comes out of the interview process that we're going through, and be able to solidify this plan from the county level. The jurisdictional teams. Now this is where we're really focusing on right now. Everybody on this call is a member of a jurisdictional team, whether you're at the county or you're at town or village. We are beginning a process of jurisdictional interviews, which I'm going to talk a little bit about here. And you are the local participants that are responsible for plan participation and adoption. So we've outlined that as well. You are the jurisdictional teams that we are going to be focusing on over the next few months here to gather as much information and develop strategies. Again, the stakeholders and the public. And these are colored this way, and you'll see why in a minute. The document is organized. The strategy document that I sent you on Friday is organized according to these colors. So the meetings we have coming up are the jurisdictional interviews is something that we've mentioned over the phone to many of you as part of inviting you to today's meeting. The jurisdictional interviews are something that we are going to hold one-on-one with the community. So I'm a facilitator for instance, the town and village of Walton. We are going to have a one-on-one meeting with the village of Walton in the town of Walton, and then so on and so forth. And I'm going to guide those communities through an interview process to collect data and start organizing around risk areas, places where you have concerns about your built environment or your populations, etc., and ask you questions about hazards that have come, natural hazards that have come through in the last 5 to 10 years and your experience with those, etc. we're going to be looking to have those meetings over the next month and a half. And again, we're going to try to get as many people from each town onto one of these interviews as we can. So if you could work together with your other community representatives, your other jurisdictional team members, to pull together a time that you could work with us on this. Our team is going to be doing virtual jurisdictional interviews. And again, you'll see a little bit more about what that's going to look like coming up. But we'd like to get that on the schedule as soon as we possibly can. Later on this summer, towards the end of August, there will be a series of multi-jurisdictional meetings, and Michael Allen will talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes as well. There will also be a mitigation strategy presentation from DISHES to really organize your thinking for dealing with mitigation, mitigating against natural hazards. And there will be a presentation of the draft plan for comment. All of these things are things that we're requesting your participation in. And then when you go through that strategy document, you can identify where you're being asked to participate based on those colors. So you'll see here the green is the jurisdictional team. So if you see that next to a meeting, please review the content of that meeting and be ready to discuss that further with us as we reach out to you. Expect that we will be inviting you to that meeting and looking for your participation. So more about these jurisdictional interviews. Again, we're looking at July 22nd through August 21st, about a month here. So right after this call, in the next few days, you can expect our team to be reaching out to you directly, and we are going to be trying to set up these interviews. They're approximately about 2 hours that we'll need of your time to walk you through the entire process of data collection and review of your risk and help you see the risk assessment that we've developed for your community as well. We're looking at trying to fill time slots of 9 to 11 a.m., 1 to 3 p.m., or 3 to 5 p.m. So again, just if you can organize around trying to find a date. If you want to offer us a date of availability that you're happy with, let us know. That would be we'll lock that in. Otherwise, we'll work with you to set that time up. And before your jurisdictional interview, please review the jurisdictional survey I sent you on Friday. We're happy to send that out again if necessary. And consider a number of things. So natural hazards that affect your community. Feel free to offer other hazards as well that are concern to you. We can discuss them as well. We are focusing on natural hazards in this hazard mitigation plan, but the conversation can include other hazards if they come to mind as a serious concern. Also consider all your vulnerable assets, meaning buildings or road infrastructure or just anything that natural assets, the river, the various parks, etc. What are the assets that you have, and specifically are any of them vulnerable to natural hazards? There is definitely in Delaware County a vulnerability to flooding. And you as jurisdictional representatives know best where that happens in your community, and we're going to be looking to you to point us in the direction. Additionally, you're going to know best where your vulnerable populations are, where folks are older than the age of 65. They typically have a little bit less flexibility in dealing with natural hazards, or are more vulnerable to certain types of hazards such as heat. And have less of an ability to evacuate. So this is a very key population. Additionally, likewise, like under the age of 5, and communities that are in poverty are also struggle with being able to deal with hazard mitigation disasters. Sorry, natural hazards disasters. So just to be prepared to talk about those types of populations as well. Also be prepared to talk about recent and future development in the floodplain. If there's anything that you know of in your community where somebody may have done some development or is planning on developing in the floodplain. We want to know about that. We also want to discuss the critical infrastructure in your community. We've identified a number of critical infrastructure facilities throughout Delaware County, but we by no means have an exhaustive list. We also don't know how you think about your critical infrastructure, so we're going to want to hear from you about that. And then any other resources or capabilities that pertain to hazard mitigation, we're going to be collecting information about that. Of identified capabilities that most communities have that we're going to be asking you about if you have it in your community, and then discussing a little bit about the capacity that you have in each regard. And as you're looking through your jurisdictional survey, just anything that's green in here is what we're going to be asking you to do in advance of the jurisdictional interview. So please just, if you need to scan the document real quick to focus on these things, the green sections are the pieces that we're going to want you to really focus on to gather some of this information in advance of the meetings. And please, if you can, really read the entire document, because this document really outlines an entire process that is very useful for you to organize around your capacities, around how you think about your community in terms of resilience to natural hazards, etc. So the document is organized in a way that will carry you through the jurisdictional interview as well. Again, as you go through the document, really these are the things that we'd like for you to collect in advance of the meeting. So again, review the document, complete the green portions, and email that survey and any other additional names and contact information of other folks that you feel like should be taking part in this. And you can email it to availlabs@gmail.com or directly interface with your Avail liaison, who will be organizing this entire process with you. So you'll have the opportunity to work with those folks if necessary. So then after that jurisdictional interview, we should have collected from you a wealth of knowledge about how you view your community, the capabilities that you have in your community. We should have had a discussion with you about your natural hazards, risk, and vulnerabilities. And so there's a lot of context that we would have available to us that we as a team will review in advance of a multi-jurisdictional meeting that we're setting up for the end of August. And if Michael Allen, if you could talk a little bit about these multi-jurisdictional meetings and what to expect from those meetings.
Certainly. The idea here is these were all originally intended to be purely in-person meetings, but with the COVID, we've gone to more of a hybrid system. But what we're planning on doing is holding a series of meetings in late August, each broken up by jurisdiction. So the first meeting would be held at the Town of Masonville Town Hall on August 25th. And then there would be a second meeting later that day at Hancock. Then Wednesday, August 26th, and Thursday, August 27th in Delhi and Middletown. And then the last one being Thursday, August 27th in the Town of Stamford Town Hall. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing these in person because we find we get much better feedback and input from people from in-person meetings where we can roll out some maps and discuss. The idea here is we want to have a better understanding of what are the problems that you're experiencing in your area. That way we can get out there and take a look at things, have a better understanding of what's going on out there in the ground, and using all of the information which Eric has already collected from the form work that you guys have filled out with the surveys, start to collect that information, ask some questions so we better understand what the problems are so that we can formulate an idea of how to put this into the plan to best recognize what the issues are. The idea is here we're going to hold these meetings in person, but we're also going to simultaneously hold them virtually for people who either cannot attend in person, or if it's too risky for them to go out in public with the virus. That way we can cover both the bases. We also wanted to have some of these in-person meetings because not everybody has the technology or so forth to participate in a virtual meeting. So this way we feel we can hopefully capture everybody, and we want to get down there and talk to each of you, find out what the problems are, and hopefully get to see the area, identify what the problems are. And that way we can take that information back to Eric and begin to formulate this into the plan. As I mentioned, we're going to be bringing maps of each jurisdiction. So, for example, the first meeting will have maps for this jurisdiction, which is Masonville, Sydney, Tompkins, Franklin, Town and Village. That way we can sit down and present to you guys some of the initial findings which Eric has discovered from their research on hazard mitigation and also past hazards, and then talk to you about it and find out in more detail what's actually happening right now on the ground.
Thank you, Michael. So these dates are, we're locking them in and reserving these locations and moving forward for these. If you can't make it to any one of these or these dates don't work for you, please let us know. If there's a need to move any of these dates, we will look at that. But for now, we're locking in on these dates and times just due to the complications of planning the in-person meetings and the simultaneous virtual webinars. So from the big picture, here's where we're at right now. We've been project planning March through June. We're in data collection July and August. We are into the review of the information from the jurisdictional interviews and start thinking about strategies. So taking our, understanding our risk, understanding our vulnerability, and start pivoting towards thinking about solutions to those things or ways that we can start to reduce that risk throughout our communities. And then we move to September, where we will really try to hammer onto developing really strong strategies for mitigation. And again, that Dishes will be offering some guidance on that later in September. We'll be asking you to come to another meeting, whether it's virtual or in person is yet to be decided. But we'll be looking to guide you on how successful mitigation strategies are drafted and defined, and how to work through those. And then in October, as we finalize things, we are going to be doing a draft plan presentation, which opens the plan up for public comment, and then we move into adoptions and approvals, et cetera. So FEMA requires 45 days of review, and we will also be needing to get adoptions at each jurisdiction. So we'll need to put this onto your monthly meeting calendar, or whatever process you have in your jurisdiction for approving the plan. We'll want to do that in December and January in order to adopt this in time for meeting the FEMA requirements. So we've been talking a lot about the piloting of this software that we're building for Dishes. This entire process that we're engaging in right now is to again, it's to integrate all of the planning at the local level with the state level, and that goes in two different directions. By developing a number of data products at the state level, we are able to offer innovative planning tools to the locals. So, tools that might be very difficult to procure at the local level, when it's organized at the state level, there's a lot of new software technologies that allow us to build things that what we call it telescoping. So you zoom down from the state level, or zoom in from the state level to the county level to the town level, we have the data at the state level, which is what we did in 2019. If we build the capacity at the state level, it gives us the ability to utilize that in local planning. On the flip side, building the infrastructure to then collect that information at the local level and have it actually feed up to the state level is another piece that is, you know, modern technology makes possible, right? And a lot of the plans that exist right now, FEMA hazard mitigation plans, are static documents. They're paper documents, and they're useful in their own right. But we, or at DISH's at least, at New York State, and I think FEMA in general, and many researchers of hazard mitigation planning are starting to realize that it needs to be more active. The data needs to be more available. The information needs to be more available, specifically in how people consume information today. We consume it very differently than we did a decade or two ago. So the tools that we're piloting right now are meant to provide interactivity and the ability to click into your community and to navigate data the way that I think most folks do now in the age of the internet. And so I'm actually going to pull out of this presentation and go to a live demonstration of this website. Before I do so, I just want to let you know that there's also in the document I sent you on Friday, this PowerPoint, there are 2 links that we've provided, and we are going to be populating the Delaware.mitigateny.org. That is where we're going to be putting information. That's going to be the final product of this hazard mitigation planning process. And right now it is a blank template. It has data in it, but it has no content, no narrative content. We took the 2013 Delaware County Hazard Mitigation Plan and we populated the template, and that is available to review at Delaware2013.mitigateny.org. That is we were testing the website using the Delaware 2013 Hazard Mitigation Plan. So some of it's complete, some of it's not fully complete in terms of it's not an exact one-to-one to your 2013 plan, but for the purposes of seeing what a plan can look like, seeing some of what you've said in the past, it's an opportunity to dig in. And so I'm going to be showing you a little bit of both as I do this tour. So I'm going to hop over here to the live site. So if you click on Delaware.mitigateny.org, what you will find right now, again, is it's a blank, mostly blank template. The template includes a number of things that are templatized, right? So there are sections here that are going to exist in all of the plans that we do across the state. This software allows us to put it. This is going to be available to any county in New York State that it chooses to utilize this. So we can, by just changing the name in front of mitigateny.org, I can open. We're also building this Sullivan County Hazard Mitigation Plan, as I said, and so this basically is a templatized piece that we are then allowing for customization at the county level. So, for instance, you see here, this is a photograph from Sullivan County, and we would be looking for photographs that represent Delaware County as part of this, as part of building out your plan, and then everywhere in here where there's space for text right now, you'll see it's empty, this is why I will switch over to the Delaware 2013 plan, because you'll see that when we have content, this populates automatically. And many of the data components, as I mentioned earlier, that were developed at the state level, that are available because of the work that was done in 2019 at the state level, That data is also templatized, so this is available at any one of the counties as we pull them all, as we make them come online. So not every county has a mitigateny.org yet, and that's the ideal, is to get them all up and running online. But we're going to be doing it one at a time here. And as you go through the site, if you when you click on delaware.mitigateny.org and you click around, you'll notice that there's a lot of different visualizations about different kinds of hazard events and different pieces of information about national flood insurance claims in your community. There's also, as I mentioned earlier, we have information about critical assets in your community. I should also note here that as an alpha software, there are going to be some things that don't necessarily work properly. These are things that we're going to be ironing out over the summer, fall, as we're building this software. So right now, this map has a software bug where it's not showing us what it. Showing us just an FYI that if you're seeing things that aren't working properly, we're actually going to be looking for that information from you. So if you notice anything, let us know. If there's anything that doesn't work the way that you're expecting it, we want to know what that is. Because when this goes public, we're going to want folks in the community, citizens, to feel like they're getting the information and it makes sense. And I'm going to switch over to the Delaware 2013 site just to show you what a populated one looks like. So this here, there we go, is a populated website with some information that we've put in various sections. And as we go through this, you'll see, so this is language that's lifted directly from the 2013 Hazard Mitigation Plan. We have information from meetings. There's a series of forms that I'll show you shortly that we're filling out as part of the planning process that will be automatically sort of, as we fill the forms out, they automatically populate the site. And there's a number of different pieces to the puzzle. These are all meeting FEMA requirements. We're going to ask you to take a look at your community, to look at the hazards of concern that we have identified via the National Weather Service has an events database, a storms events database, and we're utilizing that to look at previous events. The previous events that we have for your community are listed on your hazards page. It is available at multiple levels, so we can shift this site to go down to the village or town level, and I'll show you more about that in a little while, and that'll change some of the information here. But in advance of your interview, we're asking you to take a look at the county level hazards of concern, because many of the events in the NOAA's storm events database list the storm at the county level, even though in the description it'll say something about a more specific location. So we'd ask you to take a look at your entire county. And additionally, there's a couple of different visualizations that you can see. So flood loss in terms of dollars by year, flooding events per year, flooding events by month, so you can see seasonality of events. And we're going to ask you to take a look at some of your most recent hazards. There's descriptions here that are somewhat, the way that NOAA collects this information is sometimes accurate, or sometimes it's fleshed out, and other times it's very shorthand. And we're going to be looking to flesh that out with you. There's tools here to supplement the data that NOAA provides, that we are then going to be able to take take more information from you about these events and provide even things like links to media, et cetera, so that we understand as a community our previous events. And there's some more visualizations here as we go through to see where flooding has occurred in the community, for instance, over time. You can sort of play around with these visualizations. Additionally, as we keep going through the tool, there's a whole section on risk. Again, we have our inventory. If you could take a look at the inventory of total number of buildings in the annual 1% flood or 0.2% flood. Colloquially, these are called the 100-year and 500-year floods. So if you've heard of those before, the 1% is the 100-year, the 0.2% is the 500-year flood. And so you have the number of buildings in those communities. And this may work properly. Yeah. So here's the list of. If you click on that, it opens this page and it gives you a list of those places that are in the floodplain. So you can actually dive in a little bit deeper there. And again, we have information about critical infrastructure. We're really interested in critical infrastructure that is both our list and your information to see where they are in the floodplain, if there are any in the floodplain. We'd like to know about them, and that can be a very important piece to developing strategy, because really, if it's critical infrastructure, we need to make sure it's mitigated against the 1 and 0.2% floods. And yeah, so you can dig around on this site. If you're interested in one that is mostly populated, I recommend looking at the Delaware 2013 one. And as I said, utilizing the delaware.mitigateny.org as the plan is getting fleshed out. That's where all the information is going to go. So it's 2 different ones here. I know that might be a little bit confusing for some folks, but the reason I'm sharing the 2013 one is because it has previous information in it, so it can give you a little bit of guidance in terms of what to expect from your final plan. Now, I'm also going to be hoping that that there will be a number of you that will be very interested in utilizing these tools long term, right? We expect that we're providing here some tools that are useful for your work beyond just mitigation planning. And so we're going to be signing you up at these interviews to become users of the tool. We're going to look for getting you a password so that you can get in. I just clicked on the back end. This is not available to a public, a citizen looking at the plan. This is admin only. But everybody on this call is an admin. You're an admin for your community, and if you have any interest in doing this, we will provide you support to learn how to use these tools and to provide all of the information through here. On the back end, we have what's just a normal, I guess, like a thing that you may have seen before, which is called a content management system. This is a custom content management system for hazard mitigation planning. So each and every one of these list items here corresponds with a requirement for the hazard mitigation planning process. And as we fill out the plan, we can submit those pieces and label them started or ready for review. And those can then Division of Homeland Security can review the plan piecemeal if that's a way that we are able to turn it over to them. We'll also be going through a number of these forms that I talked about for data collection. Our team has a process for interviewing you to collect information about a variety of things, and so we'll be asking you about some, things like building codes and stuff like that, or other capabilities and outreach and planning, financial capabilities that you have. Just ask you a couple questions about that, and as part of our interview process, collect a bunch of information that again populates the entire website, and also provides a base level of data that currently is not possible for dishes to have all in one place. If you think about like all of these capabilities that people have been writing about in their hazard mitigation plans for the last 2 decades, they're all in static documents, and there hasn't been a way to just locate them all into a database that is then made available at the state level, and that's what this is designed to do. So the more accurate we are on this, the more that the Division of Homeland Security can put their resources towards helping communities that need needs in terms of capabilities.
Hey, Eric, if I could just touch on one point for the capabilities, and that form can look, and you've done is provided guidance that will help you along when you're going through this form to kind of gauge how to answer the questions, how to look at the capabilities within your communities, the capability types. So when you're looking at these forms on the back end and we are going through them in the interviews, we will be able to provide you with a little bit more understanding of how to look at capabilities and think about them. I just wanted to let everybody on the call know that this guidance is available. We do also have prompts for each question, just to really, help with the process of filling these out.
Thank you, Erica. And additionally, so when I talked earlier about providing data from the state level down, we have a data set that we have been working on at the state level that is made available through this tool suite in a way that allows planners to have it specific to their community, right? So the data that we're looking at here is there's a couple of different elements that we're looking at. First and foremost, we have, if you zoom in closely, we have building footprints. So these building footprints have been associated with the parcel data set that is the tax parcel data set from Office of Real Property Services that's available through the New York State GIS Clearinghouse. We have linked them together with the buildings, so we have information about that building based on the information that we have from the tax parcels. We then are able to cross this information with the FEMA floodplain. So we can look at the 1% or 2% floodplains, and we can see what buildings are showing up inside of that floodplain. And from a glance from 30,000 feet, we see where we have hotspots in our communities. We also can select the data based on, so we're looking at Delhi right now, and if we click on this link here, we can see which buildings in Delhi are at risk. It takes a minute to load because it's quite a large data set. But we can see that we have agricultural buildings. There is one in the 0.2% floodplain. We have some community services that are in the floodplain, public services that are in the floodplain. These are going to be the things that we're most interested in really trying to identify, like your critical assets specifically, but also some of the places that have opportunity for mitigation that can really reduce risk through your community. We can zoom into those buildings deeper as we select buildings. They'll appear on the map with pins so that we can zoom in on exactly which buildings we've selected. And as we work together, what we're going to be trying to do with you is drawing things on this map, like you've seen probably in other planning meetings. We are going to be interested in collecting the information that we're gathering from you. So let's say that you zoom us into this section here. We've got a couple of buildings here that are of interest to your community because they are maybe they're commercial, they're important to the community in some way, shape, or form, and you want to focus on potentially mitigating this set of buildings. You want to talk about potentially that maybe this is a Main Street, Delhi, and it's an area of concern that you have. So we can look at a number of different types of things here. As I said earlier, we're going to be interested in knowing where your recent future development are. Other things like relocation zones that we're going to be interested in here in finding out where you think people can relocate to, and we can list all of these zones. We can create them as zones and then list them all for our review later. And so as we save these zones, they become new ways of like hashing out the data. So I can now look at specifically what's within the Main Street Delhi. And again, you notice a bug here that when I selected that, it did not select just the buildings that are in that. And we're taking a look at those types of bugs. But this will be the process. We're gonna work with you in your community to go through this map and describe a number of pre-prescribed data collection methodologies to look at exactly where you say that you have issues. So again, as we talk about, for instance, maybe evacuation routes, maybe there's an issue with floodplain in the middle of your evacuation route. We can list that as a new problem area, and we can just quickly make these things. They will all then be listed in a separate place over here where we have a list of the zones and where those problems are. And many of the zones that we create, again, auto-populate the public plan on the front side. So, yeah.
Eric, I think this would be a good time to see if we have any questions on the line regarding, any of the tools we've shown, or because it is a lot of information. So if anybody has any direct questions, please feel free to ask.
Actually, that's right where we are in the presentation as well. So,
hey Eric, before we jump away from the tool,
sure.
I was just maybe hoping that you could highlight the toggle between the county perspective in the plan and the jurisdictional perspective, since we have a number of the jurisdictional representatives on the line.
Sure. So there's two different ways where we can toggle again through this from the county down, right? So in the drop-down menu here, when we select, let's select a town here. Let's select.
We have folks from Stanford here.
Beautiful.
And Delhi.
So we have Stanford, right? So now I've selected Stanford. The data now is automatically telescoped down to Stanford, right? So now we have some information about Stanford. Again, this map should zoom in directly or highlight Stanford, and this is a bug that we're looking into. And then the information for Stanford will be specific to Stanford. So there are some things where we've identified as being specific pieces that can be that need to be discussed by each jurisdiction. So as we develop, so for instance, if we while we develop like a statement about your critical, or a statement about your assets at risk, this statement is going to be specific to your community. And let me show you what I mean by that on the back end. So if I go to that statement right here, right now, if I were to type something in here, this would be at the Delaware County level. But if I type in something for Stanford Town, let's go down to Stanford Town, and let's just say, hello. This will now be available at the Stanford Town level here on this page. We'll have to reset our. So again, the way that this works is it telescopes all the way into the jurisdictions, and there are a number of requirements from FEMA that need to be developed, like statements that need to be developed at the jurisdictional level. So
right. Something that's really important about this, if I could just jump in, at least from the planning and the state perspective, is that alongside the kind of what would typically be considered the base plan, which is the county plan, there now are jurisdictional annexes that are required by the state standards. But what this new website is going to do for what we've been calling a jurisdictional annex is really transition every single community's plan into a whole sort of set of data and narrative and information that is specific to that community but runs in parallel to the base plan. So it's almost like each and every community has its own individual hazard mitigation plan that, you know, people in your community can totally forego even ever looking at the county plan if they wanted, and they could only look at their jurisdictional plan. You know, and the beauty of this site that Avail is developing is that, you know, having all of that data, the hazard data, the event data, the asset data, having all of that, you know, specific to each community, just front loaded into the website, really takes out a lot of the guesswork in the kind of information they're going to be looking for, you know, during the planning process. So I think this is a really special part of the transition to Mitigate NY, and I really want to highlight it because this is where you all will be working. And, you know, you'll really see that there's just sort of an instant connection between the information that you provide and what shows up on your community's website. So, you know, it's really not like a theoretical information gathering. It's very sort of instantly gratifying, you know, and you can leverage this on your own websites, of course. So I think this is a particularly special part of this plan and this website and the capability here. And, you know, you're just being introduced to this, but, you know, think about who from your community telling the story of, you know, and the history in your community, because some of these things, of course, are technical and data driven, but other pieces of this, particularly in the planning process and in the risk, and while you're, you know, coming together to understand your goals and objectives at a local level, you know, some of that is just people understanding what's happened in the past and having that institutional and historic knowledge. So, you know, we really want to make sure that your teams represent your technical expertise and your professional expertise, but that this kind of website can really be showcased for a lot more than that. And that's compelling, at least from a funding perspective, for, you know, your application development, right? Like the things that you would leverage for an application for grant funding are going to kind of be built in here if you tell the story of your community, and then the data and the information supplied by Avail, you know, supports that and is visualized in these jurisdictional pages. So just wanted to share that piece. And, you know, I'm sure as the planning process goes on further, you know, you'll have a lot of opportunity to explore, you know, how you can make these pages your own. And also something we want to understand from you is there something missing from those pages that, you know, your community really values and you'd like to see represented. You know, this being that it's a pilot, part of the nature of this process is to receive information from you that's going to change the way that this plan looks and functions and is accessible to people. So please don't be shy with your feedback. Don't be shy about this works for me or it doesn't. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that something is going to change, but it will, it may, and it also will really affect the conversations that we're all having, because, you know, the hope is that something like this becomes, you know, available to everybody across the state and makes their hazard mitigation plan update, or maybe their first plan perhaps, you know, a lot less stressful and burdensome than it's been in the past. So, you know, we really want to hear from you also as you're moving through this and you're utilizing the tools and you're seeing things, you know, come up online. If you think that folks in your community, you know, would find other pieces helpful to them. So, you know, we really want to consider this a collaboration, and, you know, we trust the facilitators at Avail to represent the thought that we've given it, but at this point, everything is flexible in some way. So anyway, really appreciate you all being here, and really excited to see this thing come alive. So anyway, that's all for me for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon. So are there any other questions or comments, concerns, anything at all from our jurisdictional teams? Are there anything that you need clarified or anything further?
Not hearing anything at this moment. I think I just want to jump in too and, you know, underscore a bit of what Shannon said, but also just point out that, you know, this is there's a lot to introduce here, obviously, with these tools. So there's a lot to get through just to show you that they exist and that we're going to be working in this capacity. At your jurisdictional interview, you'll be able to see the information that is specific to your town or village, right? So you will be presented with the information, with the data. I just want to kind of clearly set the expectations that you'll be presented with the data that says, these are your assets that are at risk. This is what the data is telling us, right? This is what the data is telling us of your history or your historical occurrence of these hazards, and these are the events that we know are documented in your community or in this county. And the point is to, that during these planning processes, you do this a lot already. You've already done this in multiple planning processes over the years, and often that information is just kind of lost, right? I mean, it sits on the shelf and it's a doorstop for some communities. And so once you really put this information in this format, it will live there, for the next time as well, and you can continue to enhance that. So the interviews are going to be a really good opportunity to see all the things that Eric showed at your specificity, where you'll be able to really supplement and enhance the information with your own local knowledge, like Shannon said. So that will be a real opportunity to see what these tools tell you about your community and how you can feed back more accurate information where it's not, or just enhance it with additional data.
Great. So I'm looking forward to taking folks on tours of your community via this tool suite. And I'm looking forward to talking with you about your understanding of your community risk, your vulnerabilities that you're aware of, and gather as much information from you as I can. And that's likewise for our entire team here. So we're very excited to get in here and work with you. After this call, you can expect that I will, and my team, Avail team, will be reaching out to you directly to set up a meeting. Again, if you can just take a look at your schedules and figure out what works for you. We would like to get you as a community set of jurisdictional leadership. We'd like to get you onto this interview process as soon as possible. And again, we're expecting it to be about a 2-hour process just to go through these tools one-on-one and gather as much information as we can from you. So if there's any questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, expect from us soon another round of direct outreach to try to set those meetings up. So are there any other questions or thoughts or concerns before we close out today's meeting?
So Eric, this is Shelley.
Yes.
I just want to remind the towns and villages, each of you has a TPAS planner. Kristen, Ned, and I in our office are sort of heading this project up from the county perspective, but I would encourage you to include your planner in your jurisdictional planning team, because we can help gather whatever information has come out of older plans, as well as help you with understanding which rules and laws and that type of thing that you have in your community would be beneficial to acknowledging, as well as understanding future development projects that maybe your planning boards are looking at would be very important for you to kind of think about. So really lean on our department, because we really can help you gather that data